All right, let's do this. How are you? What's happening? I'm Marc Maron. This is my podcast. Welcome to it. You know, I'm recording these things a day or two ahead. And my life has really been on set. And it's been pretty exciting in a lot of ways. Because, look, Michael McKean just signed on. Justin Long is in it. You know, I knew this already. I've already worked with these guys. And as you know, Lily Gladstone, Sharon Stone, Talia Ryder plays my daughter, and Judy Greer today. It's just, come on, man. So many funny people. But I got to be honest with you, Justin Long, who I didn't know. I haven't seen him in a while. You know, he's in Dodgeball and a bunch of other stuff. Seems like a funny guy. But he comes in to do this thing. He's playing an influencer he's already a little old to be an influencer. But you guys, one of the funniest days I've ever had. I mean, to be around someone that just is so funny that all day long, you know, we're riffing, we're improvising, and he's just doing shit. We're breaking up on camera all the time. And I was like, this is amazing. Why can't I have this every day in my life? The laughter. Where is the that can make me laugh all day long? Where are they in my life? It was just so good. I mean, obviously, it makes it special when it doesn't happen every day and all day long. And, you know, you can't laugh all day, every day. You're a moron. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe you'd be the happiest person in the world. I don't know. But it was great. And Michael McKean's a pro, and it's great to hang out with him, sit around, talk about music, movies, people he's worked with. He's playing my manager. That's what I've been doing. We've got a week and a half more. That's it. I'm a little punchy. Today on the show, I talked to Billy Corben. Now, this guy, he's a documentary filmmaker, and you know he first got noticed for his 2006 doc Cocaine Cowboys about the Miami drug trade. He just made the documentary From Russia with Lev, executive produced by Rachel Maddow. And the funny thing is, I've known this kid for a while because, look, I know he's been making movies, these docs and stuff, but his mom and my mom were good friends down in Florida for years. And I'd tell him this. I mean, for years, I had to hear about this kid. You know, his mother was always like, well, Billy's in Hollywood. Billy's doing this movie. Billy, and my mother's like, what about Billy? Do you know Billy? I'm like, all right, enough with the Billy kid. I get it. He's doing things. But now he's down in Florida and, you know, he's got some, you know, a past in trying to be a child actor, which he was for a bit, but he makes good documentaries. And this documentary about Lev Parnas and the Ukraine debacle where, you know, basically Trump during his presidency was trying to coerce the Ukrainian government to feed him some kind of dirt on Biden, or he wasn't going to give them arms. Okay, he wanted a quid pro quo, dirt, and you get your stuff. This is like, you know, aid. That was the impeachable offense. But this character, Lev Parnas, is kind of sucked into Trump's orbit, and he's just like this guy. I can't even explain it. The kind of experience it is to watch this guy being sort of this Trump acolyte and this Ukrainian national, and, you know, his life in trying to do Trump's bidding in the Ukraine. It was like a clown show. But now he's reformed. And in terms of how he's apologetic. And it has an interesting ending in terms of the conclusion and how he has come to Jesus' moment. It wasn't Jesus, but, you know, he woke up from the bad Trump dream. But, yeah, it's a great documentary. I really enjoyed it, and it was great to talk to Billy. Yeah, so, you know, you guys know what to do. I would certainly vote for Kamala. I would do that. so at least we can salvage what is left of decency and democracy and at least cultural representation. And I would try, again, I'll say, to talk reason into your friends that are not voting at a protest or throwing their vote away. And as you know how I feel, and I've always felt, this is not a Democrat and Republican contest. This is a Democrat and fascist movement contest. You know, it's hard to even act, normal. It's just like one of these things where you go through your life and then you have that moment like, well, this is going to happen next week, one way or the other. There's no stopping it. And it's really, on the wire. I mean, it's crazy, but it'll happen. And I just cannot bear or begin to imagine the type of anxiety and aggravation and anger and just insanity of another 4 years of that clown, Trump. And look, it's my opinion. I've talked about it forever. I've talked about fascism forever. I've talked about whatever. It's just, I'm exhausted. And it's happening. Just remember, and I wrote this in the update, which kind of got a little juice to it because I put it up on the whatever. But in the face of cultural annihilation, do not annihilate yourselves. Do not take that on. Find a way through. Find a way to hold on to your voice and live your truth. Because if the worst happens, that's going to be the challenge. How do you hold on to your voice? Hold on to your personal truth when everything you know about what's right, wrong, and free is annihilated. Upbeat. That's all I'm doing. It's all upbeat from here on out. Look, Billy Corben has done this movie, From Russia with Lev. It's on the free streaming service Documentary Plus. You can watch it there. You just go to docplus.com or get it on Apple TV, Roku, and other platforms. It's a very good doc. It's almost endearing, but it is a very thorough sort of look at what a criminal Donald Trump is. And this is my conversation with Billy. We had a lovely talk. Now, if I can just get your levels right.
Check 1, check 2. Loud Jew, loud Jew.
Yeah,
Jew
that's
cackle.
Good. Yeah. Not yet. No radio cackles yet.
All right.
Yeah.
Peep-pop.
Do you do enough radio to have figured out how to do the radio cackle?
I back up or I'll go
right, but it's like it's not even. You just wait for the other two guys to laugh and you go, yeah.
Other two guys. Yeah, there's always the other two guys.
I used to do a joke about that. Like all morning radio is like there's a main guy, a funny guy, and then a baffled woman. And it sounds
the whole
and it sounds like
shtick.
This. It sounds like blah 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 blah. Oh, fellas, yeah, that's the structure.
Oh, morning radio.
But you're not on the morning.
No, I used to drop in on that show on a Friday show.
Yeah,
and I actually did it because the comedians were there promoting the
Their
improv.
gigs.
Yeah,
yeah,
that weekend, and so I would come around and just talk movies opening, and I would just meet the comedians, and that was my playground. That was awesome.
That's why you liked it.
That is why I liked it. I started a lot of friendships that way, and it was funny. I discovered in that era that the comedians who were traveling with their iPads or staying in the club apartment or hotel or whatever, they would sit and watch Netflix streaming, and they'd watch docs, and they would watch some of them. So it's like this.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm going to go hang out with comedians to see if they know who I am. This would be good. And if they don't, I'll ask them if they have their iPad with them.
That was the only. No. The ones who didn't know who I was were more fun.
Yeah.
Gilbert Gottfried was the most fun. I'd brought my Dirty Jokes DVD to have him autographed.
Yeah.
He was going to be there that day.
Yeah.
And he autographed it. Dear Billy, stop talking to me. That's what it said. Gilbert Gottfried.
And he meant it.
And he meant it.
Yeah. He was great, dude.
Amazing. I watched him bomb that weekend at the Improv.
Well, that's not an unusual thing.
It was amazing.
That's really Gilbert at his best.
Yeah,
Gilbert bombing.
It was amazing.
Yeah. So what were you going to say? What were you holding for the mics? Didn't you?
So since about, I don't know, 2009, my mother would say to me,
"Yeah,
Billy, when are you going to be on Marc's podcast? Why aren't you on Marc's podcast?" And I'm like, I don't know, Mom. She's like, I'm going to ask Toby. I'm going to be like, I was like, that'll help.
Yeah.
And she's like, and then in 2015, she sends me a text message with this article that says Barack Obama is going to be on Marc's podcast. And I texted back, that's amazing. Now I'll never be on Marc's podcast.
Oh, come on. You know who we had on after Obama? We had Rich Voss on. Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, we do have a history. Your mom and my mom were pretty close friends for a period.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened there, but my mom, she's up in, she's out of the apartment. My brother moved her up into a place. She's doing all right.
Is she?
But my brother's in Florida. He's up in Jupiter.
That is Florida. That's like, because in Florida, the further north you go, the further south you are.
Yeah.
So like the more Florida it gets.
Yeah, I can't say he's particularly thrilled. It's not, I don't know. Florida is like such a show but you seem to love it. Someone described it as like, Billy, you love Miami. I'm just not so sure you like it very much. Right.
I think maybe that's
but it's full of the juice. It's got all the not
anymore. The Jews left.
Not Jews.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Juice.
Yes. No, I know.
Yeah. I know the Jews are running.
The characters and stories.
They ran the Jews out. No one talks about the fundamental move right of Florida and what it's done for the Jews. The ones that didn't die. Are they leaving?
Well, when the deli started closing, that was like the red flag.
What was that one? Fox. It was
there was Rascal House.
Rascal House,
in Sunny Isles, which is now Little Moscow.
Well, there was one. The Rascal House was down on the beach, right, somewhere
in Sunny Isles. That's right.
Not far from my mom's place.
Not far at all. No.
Yeah, I used to love that place. Yeah. And you just see the old Jews there. They bring the free basket of pastries and bread, and they're just filling up their plastic bags. We can just take these.
Yes, and we'll keep bringing more.
That's how they went out of business. People sitting there for coffee and a free bread basket
for 6 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I don't even know what what to make of the cultural landscape of Florida anymore.
I mean, you have to remember the Democrats have been a non-entity in Florida since the turn of the century, since Jeb Bush's era.
Do we call it the turn of the century? No, I like that because your generation, for us, the turn of the century was 1900. And now you're like the turn of the century. Well, the turn of the century meant like the old days, and now you're talking about it as like I was already a grown person.
It was 1999. It was 25 years ago. It was a quarter of a century.
I know. I was 30 years old, 35 years old.
Yeah,
at the turn of the century.
I remember. Yeah. I think I saw Jerusalem Syndrome.
Yeah,
like
sure.
01, 02, 02.
How old were you? 10?
I was 5.
No, come on. Where did you see Jerusalem Syndrome?
Well, you came to the South Beach Comedy Festival at some point. I don't know if
that was one time.
Yeah, I don't know if you did the show, but you talked a lot about it.
That was the worst.
It was
the worst. It's like nobody came to that thing. They put me in a theater. Yeah, there was no one there. I think Stebbins opened for me.
I think you were at the Colony, maybe on Lincoln Road in Miami Beach.
A little theater.
Yeah.
And I had Stebbins open for me, and he's doing his dark weird for my little grown up audience, and they didn't know what to make of him.
I thought it was a good show. Both of us did.
Yeah. Well, that was good. Night. You mean the friend you bought or the guy you met?
Yes.
You mean the other guy?
Yeah, I do. It was in those days, I think it was like our moms talking like, oh, my son's in the business. Oh, my son's in the business. We've never been in the same business.
It was the most annoying thing to me for years to hear my mother try to kind of paraphrase what your mom was saying about your career as a child actor. And I was like, who is this kid? What is she doing to my mother? She's like, what are you? I always felt like, Billy. I'm like, I don't even know this guy. How much do I got to hear about this kid, Billy? What was he on? A Parenthood? What was it?
I was very impressed because I knew you from Conan. I watched you in the latter half of the 90s.
Yeah, yeah.
At the end of the century, the end of the last century.
Yeah. And before the turn of the century.
Yeah, before it all turned. It turned so bad. And I thought, like, you were like a beatnik poet for me in that time. There was like people who sort of informed my evolving worldview.
Really?
There was there was Miami people like Neil Rogers on the radio, Carl Hyacin, the columnist and novelist, and then
that's what I think. That seems to me to be like the kind of root of how you look at Florida is Carl Hyacin. That you knew there was menace and beauty and corruption, and it's something that spoke to the country at large.
And dispel me of the notion that I was going to leave behind a better Florida than the one I was born in.
No, Florida's designed to only get worse.
It is by design. Yeah. It is. I was born, for crying out loud, I was born in, my dad was working in Fort Myers, Florida, so I was born in Fort Myers, Florida, in Lee Memorial Hospital in Lee County, not named for Spike, by the way.
Yeah.
So, this is Florida. I mean, that's people don't realize, because Florida, they think of Miami or Orlando, the happiest place on earth, and Florida is the South. It was the Jim Crow. Miami Beach was the Jim Crow South.
I did a show at the University of Florida. Where is that? In Tallahassee?
Oh, God. No, that's in Gainesville. FSU is in Tallahassee.
So FSU, Florida State, I'm doing a show like a month after Trump won. And it was part of the series. So I was at the college. It wasn't like a comedy club. So they had Lily Tomlin in it. So there was definitely an audience of sophisticated people. But it was at that time where I realized, because I went to a coffee shop or whatever, and I just saw huddled old Democrats, almost like having a secret meeting. I'm like, this is what it's going to be. They're afraid to talk in public. They've got to they can't talk too loud, and this is what it's going to be. There's going to be an underground movement of people who want to talk reasonably about the political breakdown of this country.
No, I mean, there wasn't going to be any reason or logic or facts. That's the most troubling thing, and I experience it every day, is that, like, there used to be a certain set of facts we'd agree upon. Water is wet, the sky is blue. Now we can have a policy conversation about how do we achieve our goals. It used to be like John F. Kennedy said, like we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's futures. We're all mortal. Let's start there. Now let's work together.
And at least have some barometer of journalistic integrity. But now, because of how technology and the internet works, you can just throw everything into doubt. And once people, the seed is planted, that the doubt happens, and then there's no anchor.
But it gets malevolent, because it's not just like we don't share facts. It's that, that line from Kennedy, we all cherish our children's future. It's like, I'm not even so sure about that. If we can't agree that putting more guns in schools is a net negative for children, where do you even begin? It's like, well, the answer to these school shootings is more guns. It's like, well, wait a second, hang on. 2 + 2 = 12. What are we doing?
It equals a Mexican standoff.
Russian roulette is what it. In our public school system.
But so you're born in Lee County.
Yeah.
And then you grow up in where? Miami?
My parents were living. They were only living there because my dad was working there. So I was born there while he was working.
How are the parents?
They're great. I tell people that. Your mom sold my parents the home that they were divorced in. That's what
Well, that's impressive. I think it might have been the only home she sold. She was not really cut out for the real estate agent life, my mother. Your mom did her a favor.
That's surprising. And then I imagine she helped them sell it again after the divorce.
I wonder.
2 sales on the same house.
Yeah, and that was it. That was the end of her real estate career. Not cut out for the cutthroat business of real estate, my mother.
I have to tell you, there are early bits of yours that come up in our daily vernacular at home and at work. Obviously I travel a lot, so lobby waffle is a regular part of the conversation.
Lobby waffle.
And,
I always loved that bit.
And we'll I'm often giving local politicians hell in Miami. It's kind of the thing, it's a hobby of mine. And so we'll very often get very self-righteous in the office. And one of us will be like, I'm Billy Corben, documentarian, provocateur, and I want to see my FBI file. Okay, I'll wait. We do that bit all the time. But there were two.
I'm so glad you liked that bit. I loved that bit.
There was two, I think, from like the first.
The one where it's like, we don't have anything.
Yeah, provocateur. We say that all the time. Provocateur. Zeitgeister. But like there were two bits. I think what was on your first album. There was the bit about that like worldview, like
totally.
Perspective. And I saw you're like I think about 15 years older than I am. I was am, and I was like, this is where I'm going. It wasn't so much aspirational as it was inevitable.
Right.
Like, I was like, I'm looking in the window to my future.
I think it's like it's a sign of like you can talk like that. And that you can have those thoughts publicly, and you can make them funny, and you can blow minds.
But you weren't a character, like you were the same guy on stage.
And I go both ways with that. For years, I was like, why can't I just become a character? All these guys seem to just be characters, and I think I was just so desperately trying to be myself that I ended up with that.
It worked. Like I don't know, it spoke to me, and I there's one bit you did about like the solace you found in the thought of suicide.
Oh, I love that bit too.
Like,
hey, I could always kill myself.
I was just like, I don't know. I was just like that. I remember my dad telling me once, like, Bill, things will never get so bad in your life that you would ever have to. When I was a kid, so it made me think about suicide and just come to me, let's talk and and then I was like, but that doesn't mean I can't think about it. Of course, in a very
but my favorite line of that was that the tag was the spiritual reprieve of the faithless. And I thought, I knew it was a deep thought, and I knew it was not going to get a big laugh.
Spoke to me, though. It spoke. And
I'm sorry, buddy.
And one of my favorites is it was after 9/11, and you were in New York, of course, and you're doing New York.
That's that first
comedy.
record, yeah.
Yes, and it was about, and I'm definitely not going to do it justice, but it was that the world survives because of women saying no.
That's right. Oh yeah.
Without them,
we're going to blow up the buildings. Yeah. No. We have people coming over. Go get some ice cream, something like that.
And I just but that was a very profound, and it prepared me for husbandry and girl daddom, and it real. I think about it a lot that without that, we're left to our primal idiotic kind of state,
and that's what it looks like now.
Yeah,
that's exactly where we're at.
What it looks like.
Yeah, and hopefully now it's really a battle between the horrible men and women.
Yeah,
I mean, really.
You mean the baby machines, Mark?
Yeah, but no, there's outside of sexism and racism, there's no reason not to vote for Kamala.
But misogyny and racism are very powerful forces. I mean, the Democrats have either ingeniously counter-programmed this election, or it's 2016 all over again.
God forbid. I can't even. I don't even know, man. I don't even know. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be a nail biter. And
but why? Why should it be? That to me is the insanity.
Look, you can sit and ponder that all you want. I don't know. I know I'm doing a joke. I was doing a joke. I shifted the joke. The joke used to be right now when Biden was still in the game. I used to say, it's just everyone's just waiting for the right guy to die. And then I'll leave it at that, and I'll go, that's a bipartisan joke, actually. Yeah. And then I shifted it last night for the first time. I said, how is it possible that 50% of the people in this country are just shitty people? And then I go, I'm going to leave it there, because with that, it's still a bipartisan joke.
Nikki Haley, of all people, she tweeted earlier this year that I have COVID brain, things that I know come to they're on the shelf too high for me to reach, and then they come a few seconds later.
That's just aging brain.
Is that mid 40s? Yeah,
it's starting.
I remember my producing partner Alfred Spellman. He was the first person in our family to get COVID, and he was describing. He's like, I got a headache and I'm nauseous. And I'm like, that's your mid 40s. I'm pretty sure all the symptoms.
That's every day.
Are just.
I used to say,
I wake up like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't know if I had long COVID. I never feel good.
Yeah, but she tweeted, whichever party drops their 80-year-old candidate first will win in November.
Oh, good. I hope she's right.
Right, but why is that not kind of if the Democrats were going to anoint a successor here, it should have been a napalm candidate. Call it Oprah, George Clooney, Tom Hanks. I don't give it. Just why is it still a statistical dead heat in the only 7 states that matter? In this,
I don't know. I don't think we're going to figure it out. But for me.
don't think you're gonna.
For me, it's just sort of like, wow, people are really brain. I mean, like, yeah, I think really what it is that I don't think a lot of people think in depth about the repercussions of making this decision. Like, I don't think that, other than shameless fascists, I think a lot of people just see this as like, well, a president's a president. They still think that way. You know what I mean? Like, I like that guy. And that's as deep as it goes.
It's dangerous. Because...
Of course, stupid people are dangerous. And it's most people. I'm gonna get emails about that. not too many, because
none of your listeners. For sure.
Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir here. But all right, so what happened? So you're taking in too much Marc Maron as a young man.
Yeah, that was my 20s, dude.
Yeah,
just freebasing.
Yeah,
Marc Maron.
Oh, but not really freebasing. Are you married?
I am.
Oh, you are, and you do have kids.
I honestly, this is like a part of my life that I don't talk about because, like, for really mostly not their privacy, but like their safety, because you just talked about the kind of psychopath that we live in.
Do you get pushback from anything you're doing? Are you expecting it for
death threats and the like? Sure, of course.
From this new thing, or it hasn't aired yet, the Lev Parnas thing?
No, Lev Parnas, it's on MSNBC. No, it predates that, because I've been pretty vocal politically in South
on the
Florida,
radio,
wherever. I mean, I have a weekly podcast, Because Miami, that I talk. I online. I'm when I was like, perpetually and perennially online.
Yeah.
I just want to punch up, because like that's the era of, we did a documentary called Screwball about A-Rod and steroids and baseball, and it was the Wall Street Journal of all places called it like the baseball movie that explains America. And to me, it was like about, we were talking about a moment ago, common values. So like, American values were like the golden rule, right? Do unto others and treat people with respect and honesty, integrity, and you'll get that back.
Or tolerance. Just tolerance, for fuck's sake.
I'd settle for that at this point.
Totally.
Yeah, like, who gives about?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to like people, but this is supposed to be a democracy.
Leave them alone.
Yeah, the people have spoken. Shut up.
Yeah, and so I would settle for that. But the new American values seem to be like, just bully, be a dick, punch down, and
double down,
and you'll become the highest paid baseball player of all time, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, or yes, kids, you can be the president of the United States.
So that's where the pushback started to happen?
I think, I don't know that when did it start to happen? I think about your friend Adam McKay, who went from making these really big, absurd comedies to making like these political movies, still funny but
thoughtful movies.
And I think really the Great Recession, for lack of a better term, radicalized him. And he said, I need to be doing something more important.
I watched that movie again.
Big Short.
I've watched it 3 times.
It's a masterpiece.
It kind of is. And at first I was like, I had a real problem with the sort of celebrity element of explaining, economic policy, or whatever you would call it. But that annoyed me at first. But the more I watch it, it's just like, it's the best.
Dude, we call our subgenre of nonfiction filmmaking pop docs. So like, that to me is what that is. That's like, how am I gonna, and it's Trojan horse storytelling. I tempt the audience with the sugar and then slip in the vegetables. Sneak in the healthy.
Well, you have to. I mean,
you have to.
That's all of a sudden, because then at that moment, people are like, "Oh, I'm thinking."
Yeah,
like,
but don't tell them.
I'm learning. It's not even
Mark,
I'm thinking.
My queue has been filled with documentaries that I quote have to watch, end quote. But that after I get home after a day of dealing with the world, I'm like, I'm not gonna get into bed and opt in to getting angry about something that I can't change tonight,
or confused about something,
right? And I'm like, I just need to go to bed. Like,
I thought I knew how I felt about that,
and now
I don't know.
Don't challenge me. It's bedtime, right? So like, but that's why I loved it. And I got to tell McKay, I was like, dude, one of the best documentaries of like the last 15, 20 years is the end credits of The Other Guys. Remember The Other Guys? They did this animated infographic about what a Ponzi scheme is. And it's this brilliant piece of nonfiction just shoehorned into the end credits of this hilarious, absurdist buddy cop
movie. Well, that was
movie.
funny about The Big Short, and also just about explaining that time, is that it was all a Ponzi scheme.
It was all a Ponzi. And so that is, I think, what the rise of Trumpism did for us at our company at Rack and Tour. We felt like, well, now we have a responsibility or an obligation with this pop doc thing. Like, the gangster movies are fun, the sports docs are fun, Cocaine Cowboys,
and
The U, and that's fun. But like, we all kind of have a responsibility to channel our energies, our skill set into something more
proactive.
Yeah, proactive.
Yeah. So, but like it seems like even with the cocaine cowboys and the sports stocks, you know, in the pop movie, I mean, you're still talking about politics. I mean, like the weird thing about what's happening, I'm in the middle of this book, Autocracy Inc. That what is shifting is that, you know, democratic politics are losing ground to sort of shadow politics of autocrats. There's a world of financing and power that happens among autocratic, you know, governments, and they're huge. I mean, you know, China, Russia, India to a certain degree. Like all these people have massive economies. So if it gets to the point where the U.S. says we're going to put sanctions on them, they're like, we don't give a, we'll sell the gas to the Russians. We don't give a Iran. You know, it's like crazy.
I would say the Florida Democrats never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And the Florida of today is the America of tomorrow. So
totally, it's a petri dish. Texas and Florida. That's how it's going to look. You got this libertarian with people who are down there with enough money to stay out of the fray and not pay taxes. And then you've got like, you know, these kind of brain-addled either religious fanatics or just angry brainwashed to do
I call them my neighbors.
Sure.
Is what I call them.
Well, I mean, like, you know, I guess I can be a little more diplomatic. But okay, so you were coming up in Florida, but like it wasn't always the intention to be this righteous. At some point, you're like, I want to be in show business.
I wanted to tell stories, and as a kid, I really did.
I mean, like I hear about people telling stories so much now. It's like this new buzzword. I'm a storyteller, or authenticity, or there's a
25 years ago, I named our company Raconteur. 25 years ago,
I know, like, but you know, when you were a kid running out here with your mother to audition for,
that became my like after school hobby. My younger brother was a real athlete, and a really gifted athlete. And he should be in that pamphlet, Famous Jewish Sports Legends, my little brother.
Oh, but
he was just good he excelled at everything. He picked up a bat, picked up a ball. He was just a hockey stick. He was just amazing at it. And so I, on the other hand, struck out at my first at bat at the North Miami Beach T-ball Optimist League. So that was baseball was
that was the end of the sporting career.
I was like, how do you strike out when the ball is sitting on a stick?
I had that moment with sports. I got hit in the face with a ball in center field. I'm like, this isn't for me.
No, and I retired pretty quickly, and so I remember I saw a girl, Jennifer Schatz. She lived in the neighborhood in the Shtetl in North Miami Beach, and
a high-end
Shtetl. Well, it was a pretty working class Shtetl that in the Cocaine Cowboys era became a little bit nicer.
But you chose to live there.
I didn't. My parents did.
Right, but you weren't forced there.
No, we were not. Yes, it was not. We were not ghettoized at that point. It was self-segregation.
It was working class Jews.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I saw her on TV in a Sears commercial riding a bike, and I thought that was when I was like 6. I was like, that was the coolest thing. I knew her, and now she was inside the Magic Story Box, and I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
So my dad called her dad and was like, how do you do that? And so my mom
was the Jewish thing.
Totally against it.
Yeah. What do we do to get my kid on that?
Yeah.
Who's her agent?
My agent was Ada Gordon at JFK at Just for Kids in Miami.
Well, okay, so your mom was against it then?
My mom was totally against. She had read...
She didn't want to be a showman? She didn't want to turn into that?
She read Shirley Temple's autobiography and Drew Barrymore's autobiography. She'd be like, by 8 years old, he's going to be on the coffee, by 9 on the pot, and by 10 on blow. And like, this is a terrible business for children. I want nothing. So my dad was my stage mom.
Okay.
And then after school, that was my activity. In Miami, there was like a ton of auditions and stuff like that in the 80s.
Yeah. Okay.
I would go out every day on auditions.
So you're doing that. You're running around Miami doing commercial auditions and bit parts and things that are shooting in Florida.
Yeah, I did like a commercial for, you name a sector, sandwich meats or toys or cars or detergent, and I did a commercial for it out of Miami. And
so you were a working little actor.
I was a working little actor, and I enjoyed it. Like it was my activity. It was like what kids do after school.
Baseball.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. So this seemed to be something, make-believe seemed to be something that I could do. And then I did a movie with Ernest Borgnine and Linda Blair. I had like one line in
Old Ernest Borgnine.
That's
pretty great.
And Linda Blair. Yeah. And I was in a scene with a guy named Scott Weinger, who came out here and blew up. He was the voice of Aladdin.
Yeah.
And he was on Full House.
He was a Florida guy?
Scott was a Miami kid, absolutely. And so they then I got Ron Howard came to town, and he was casting for Parenthood.
Okay.
And it was going to be one of the first features they shot at Universal Florida.
Okay.
And in Orlando. And so they came down to Miami looking for kids to play these roles where I had to curse. That was the moment where my mom had to go with me, because then it required travel for like weeks or months on end in Orlando, and so Dad couldn't take off work. So begrudgingly she came with me on Parenthood to Orlando, and that was her transition.
But did she enjoy it?
Stage motherdom. I wouldn't say enjoyed it, but she was a very protective mom, so she was good at it.
But she was happy. You were happy, I guess.
She was happy. I was happy, and there wasn't any give with her. It wasn't like she wasn't going to be negotiating for her or compromising for her kid.
Yeah.
So she was exceptional at it in a way that other parents.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the parents who years later would convince me to not do it anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Was not because some of the parents were
crazy,
pretty awful. Yeah.
So you do Parenthood?
Parenthood, yeah. And
do you have a real part in that?
I curse in the movie.
Oh.
It's a principle. I still get checks for that. It's the craziest thing.
The $2.45 checks?
Sometimes the checks are lower than the stamp. Yeah. Like that.
It's kind of interesting, though. And then you're like, where was that even on?
Yeah. And Croatian television. Yeah. It says it on the state. I'm always curious, because sometimes they're like a few $100, and I'm like, this is like, how a
major run.
Yeah, this
well, you ought to get a forensic accounnt, get your manager
audit NBC Universal.
You have to, or you won't get the bread.
Dude, how would I know? For $400, for $200, for 28
cents? But sometimes, for Maron, the series, my manager had them do forensic accounting at Fox or somewhere, and there was a lot of money there, dude.
Really?
Yeah, man. Because they don't know where to send the checks, or they don't try.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's just money sitting there that that doesn't.
They don't know where you are.
Whatever it is. Whatever it is, it's dubious, but it's not an uncommon practice to call them on it and have them find it.
Honestly, but I couldn't possibly be entitled to that much with the 3 or 4 lines that I had in that movie.
No, I know. I get it.
My mother was appalled because Opie was making her son curse in a movie. So she
Come on.
Because I cursed in the movie.
She was mad at
She wasn't
Ron
really
Howard?
mad. She thought it was funny.
But that was the joke, right?
That was the joke.
Yeah.
Is that a little kid was 8-year-old, 9-year-old was running around cursing. And that was the moment when I saw Ron Howard.
Yeah.
And his whole family was on set.
Yeah.
Everybody was in the movie or involved in the movie. And I was like, oh, because I watched him on Nick at Night, on the Andy Griffith Show and on Happy Days. And I was like, that's the moment where I understood that was the goal.
Right.
That you might, being an actor is like a thing that kids do. When you go to soccer or ballet after school, you don't grow up to be a soccer player or a ballerina.
No.
This is something that kids do. And then when you grow up, you don't want to be the guy taking the direction. You want to be the guy giving the direction.
Maybe. But he was a lifer, show business lifer.
Yeah.
And he had the freedom to kind of keep building.
And he was terrific.
I think he's a rare story.
He was terrific, though.
Yeah.
He was so, he knew everybody's name. It felt like a family on that set. It was very...
Well, he's a nice guy.
Yeah, it was very, comforting and very cool.
He lives up to the nice guy thing.
Really does.
Yeah.
He really, and later, a lot of years later, I got to interview him for a documentary we did. And I told him, I'm like, you're the reason why I'm here. I'm doing this.
Did he remember you and everything?
No. Well, no, he knew my part in the movie. That movie is plays to this day.
It's a big movie. It's a family movie.
It's a classic.
But that triggered that got you in the game, and so you were.
Yeah. So that was, and then Scott, my buddy Scott, came to LA for a summer.
Yeah.
On a family vacation / do some auditions because this manager came and was recruiting Miami kids.
Okay.
And so I became one of those kids. We went out. I'd never been to LA before.
Yeah.
We came.
How old?
And this was 1990.
Yeah.
I
so
think.
how old are you?
So I'm 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So real
11 or 12.
Yeah.
We did the Universal tour. We did total tourish, and then went out on auditions. And I booked something while we were here for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so the manager was like, well, why don't you come back for pilot season? And we're like, well, what's pilot season?
Yeah, back when it existed, yeah.
That's how that became a thing. And then we got into that cycle of pilot season, which, now actors can you be a series regular on multiple shows. Back then, they owned you for that cycle. So you could come out here, if you booked a pilot, which I did every year, you couldn't do you could do a guest spot, you could do a movie.
Even if the pilot doesn't go.
Even if the pilot, and that was the thing too, is they would just, even if the show got picked up, they could still fire you, replace you, write you out of the show. So
you're starting to learn that.
it took me a while to be like, I remember like year after year, and every year I did the thing.
Yeah.
I booked a pilot. I did a movie. I did a bunch of guest spots.
Right.
You know, and I did some really cool. I got to play Judd Hirsch's son on Dear John for a few episodes. I think Ben Savage, me and you.
Every Jew who's an actor of any kind will eventually play Judd Hirsch's son.
That was when like, I remember when I was like, this is like the perfect all the casting on your show was perfect.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, like, it was just like, I was like, really? I was like, it's Toby. I was like, that's crazy. I was like, that's crazy.
Oh,
Sally. I mean, Jesus, that was brilliant. You know? And then Judd, and I just like, I got to be a patient on Empty Nest. Oh. I grew up watching I knew Richard Mulligan from SOB. I watched Blake Edwards movies when I was a kid. I was like, this is, you know, I'm not going to that funeral. Like, I just, you know, I was like, I got to be a patient on Empty. So it was really cool. And then here's the way it ends is that I did a show. It was right. It was on the Warner Brothers line. Yeah. It was a pilot, but they called it a presentation, which meant that we had fewer days and less money to do a pilot. Yeah. And so it's called Odd Man Out, and John Dechter and Ed Strauss wrote it, and we there was a I'm not going to name names. There was a mom on that show, and of one of the other kids. Yeah. And my mother, I remember being in the car with her driving home from the Warner Brothers line. Yeah. We lived in Westwood. Yeah. And I was doing we lived in Westwood during the Rodney King riots too. That was wild. Well, and my mother was livid. Like, I could see like her white knuckles on the and she had quit smoking, so she had a styrofoam cigarette that she would like just to get the oral fixation going, get the emotion going. Yeah. And so she was like, I can't believe this lady. I can't believe. And I'm like, what happened? And she said they were just chatting as stage moms. I hate that I'm calling her a stage mom, but she was like, every year before we leave Miami for LA for the pilot season, Billy's father and I sit him down and go, do you want to keep doing this? Yeah. Are you sure you want to keep doing this? Yeah, yeah. And please, Billy says yes, and and then we do it. And so this woman says to my mother about her daughter. Yeah. She says, oh, well, she knows that if she doesn't work, we don't eat. and she was dead serious. And this girl had been like in diaper commercials. This was a girl who had been put to work since she was a baby. Yeah. And my mother was like appalled. And I was kind of like, you know what? I think I'm good. I think I'm done with this. And so also on that show, by the way, was Hilary Swank. She played his sister in that show. I always played like the Jewish Urkel. I'd be either the little brother or the best friend who would come in from next door or kind of a thing of the lead. So
that was back when being a Jew was an ethnic type.
There was a place for us there. And other than controlling the weather, which is all we really do now.
Yeah. So I'm surprised I have time for this.
Yeah. With this, over
I got to get on the computer.
George Soros, ZWB, the Zionist Weather Bureau over there. Yeah. Triangulating the space lasers on the west coast of Florida and all. So anyway, I retired basically. I was like 14 or 15. And then I remember my manager was like, well, the next year was like, well, go on tape. We'll fax sides. Right. Nobody knows what that. We'll fax sides. Sure. So I was like, okay, we'll do it. So we did a backyard video and they flew me out to play the little brother. Again, like not a really essential role in a Fox pilot called Reality Check. Yeah. And so it was wild. I come in, do the last audition, and they go, okay, you got the part. That's never happened to me before. Right. Like, go in the waiting room. They said, you got the part. We got to go down the hall. The cast is waiting to do the first read through. And I'm thinking, like, this is like the least important role in this show. Why? I walk down the hall. I walk in. Hilary Swank is there. Yeah. And I'm like, Hillary, what are you doing here? She's like, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm in this show. I'm in this show. That's wild. So my last two pilots co-starred Hilary Swank. Giovanni Ribisi was in that show. Oh my, the younger sister. She's like one of the highest paid actresses in television now from Big Bang Theory. Was on that show. Yeah. In that pilot.
The blonde?
Yeah.
From the flight attendant. I like her. What's her name?
It's crazy. Like and don't spoil this for everybody, but the EPs, the creators and showrunners on that were David Crane and Marta Kaufman. Okay. Yeah. And so what happened is that we do this show. It was this pilot. It was not a good show. And I left high school. I was now enrolled in a normal person's school, not like Valley Professional, some strip mall child actor. I did like strip mall child actor school. Like I was I call it a real school. It was New World School of the Arts, which was like based on the high school of the performing arts. And
in Florida?
In Miami. So it wasn't a normal high school, but I was enrolled and I was going. And so this was kind of disruptive. And so, needless to say, the show that you've never heard of did not get picked up.
Yeah.
And so what happens from there, because David Crane and Mark Kaufman did 2 pilots that year. They did Reality Check for Fox, and they did something called the Untitled Courtney Cox Project for NBC at the same time. And so Reality Check does not get picked up.
Yeah.
I become the youngest filmmaker in Sundance history at the time.
Yeah.
Hillary wins, at least two Oscars. David Crane and Marta Kaufman get their other show. Yeah. The NBC pilot did get picked up and it got a title.
Yeah.
And that was Friends.
Yeah.
And so to me, like, that was the moment where I'm like, oh, like, life isn't just about what happens. It's like what doesn't happen.
Yeah, sure.
And like that, because that show gets picked up.
Yeah.
Because that's when I realized, I was like, Mom, what are we doing here? I'm like, the goal is to get on a pilot that gets picked up. I'm stuck on some probably terrible show for years. I'm a lot richer, but I don't know that I'll be happy. I don't know that I'll ever work again. And I'm like, I just want to go and like do my own thing. And I realize, like, Reality Check gets picked up, it might have ruined all of our lives.
Of course.
That show. And by the way, there was definitely people on that show who were like, the fact that show didn't get picked up ruined my life, was the worst thing that ever happened to me.
What's that girl's name? Christina something? Who was the one from Big Bang Theory? Why can't I remember?
I don't know. Like, mid-40. We're like, we're just.
Well, I never watched the show, you know. So.
I didn't either, to be fair. She's got a really Kaylee Cuoco?
Yeah, that's it. Good for you.
Oh, see, you did it. It's coming.
You did it.
It's slow
Thank
going.
God.
Miami, I'm on Miami Standard Time.
I just want to say that was a no Google pull.
Yes.
Yeah. But so when, okay, so you
By
go
the way,
back.
I don't do Google. I refute. When I have a moment like that, I'm like, I'm not.
Yeah, I sometimes refuse, but then I'm like, what is it? I imagine it's contributed to memory loss. I would think it has to. Yeah. So you go back to Florida, you're out of the game, and you finish high school?
I finish, well, I start. My sophomore year in high school, I start my first production company with my producing partners. One guy.
Same guys?
Yeah, that I work with today. One guy I've known so long, our mothers used to bathe us together.
Come on.
We were sophomores in high school.
Yeah.
It was weird.
He was,
no,
seems wrong.
Literally, I know him since we're 5 or 6 years old from preschool, David Sipkin. And then my other partner, Alfred Spellman, I met in TV production class in 9th grade in middle school in Highland Oaks Middle. And
That's crazy.
Our teacher handed us the keys to the studio. She said, you two have something. You work together and you produce the morning news. That's how that happened.
Sophomore in high school, you started a production company?
Yes, our first production company.
What was the goal?
The goal was to make movies. The goal was to tell stories and to have fun and to kind of be a director, like Ron Howard.
Right. Well, who was giving you the money?
That was the problem, Mark.
It's a production company by name only.
We came up with this shtick where we were going to do educational videos by kids for kids. Like write scripts about.
So you had an angle
at that moment. They had just introduced an AIDS education curriculum into the public schools, but all the teachers were petrified of it. They didn't know what to do or how to teach it. So we said, let's write. I wrote a script.
Well, you're lucky, and now in Florida, it's against the law, so you wouldn't be able to teach it at all.
No, well, but fortunately now kids aren't having sex anymore. Teenagers are not having sex.
They're not?
Abstinence, that solved the whole problem.
Finally worked.
Yeah, it finally took. And so we're on our way in Florida.
So do you make these videos?
Yeah, we did. We made 3 of them.
And you got paid?
And we didn't get paid. We got money to make them. They were like community service. We didn't get paid like
a grant almost.
Exactly. They were grants. That's exactly right. And they were in kind. People from the community donated equipment and stuff like that. And so that's how we started.
Right. And so you go to college, Joe?
Yeah, I went to the University of Miami.
And you're still doing the
I'm
production
a functioning
company?
illiterate.
Yeah,
that's correct.
What'd you study?
I studied political science. Film writing, screenwriting.
So you widened your talents.
I guaranteed I'd be unemployable. That's correct.
Yeah, no, but you're already in show business, so you knew at least when you went into college what you wanted to learn. I mean, political science and film writing, that seems reasonable for a guy who knows what he wants to do. You weren't just sort of like partying and I don't know what I want to do.
No, I was not a partier, but I was really interested in kind of a pre-law curriculum. That's what poli-sci was for.
Yeah.
And then also with screenwriting is that I tell people, like, the best acting class I ever took was screenwriting. The best directing class I ever took was screenwriting. The best editing class I ever took was screenwriting. The best on and on. Like, there's just, like, as soon as you understand that craft and those rules, you are ready to break them, and you're ready to have at it. Like,
so are you making films in college?
Yeah, we did. In fact, we took a leave of absence to work on a feature, and then I took a second leave of absence.
A fictional feature?
Yeah, a scripted thing. Yeah. It didn't take. And then there was something. It was the dawn of the digital era. We had gotten DSL in the apartment. I'll never forget where we went from dial-up to DSL.
A big day.
And like with Napster, I'm like, we could get a song in 90 minutes. We can download a whole song.
Amazing.
Like, this is earth-shattering. Like
90 minutes.
This is going to change everything.
For nothing.
And and it was like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so, but the writing was on the wall. Like, I remember Alfred saying, like, listen, the way the post office, the way it's kind of the written word, and the news and business and like this
print business.
And this is going to, because this technology is only going to get better and faster.
Yeah.
It is going to the recorded music industry. And eventually what we want to do will not be so far behind.
Right.
So let's kind of stay low overhead. Let's stay agile and flexible. And the digital video was just happening. Remember, like,
but also like it's going to, the paradigm that existed, but ultimately it helped you.
It was a democratization.
Yeah.
Because first there was like this democratization of production where digital video made smaller, cheaper, more accessible from a production standpoint.
Sure.
But then film, which was incredibly onerous and expensive, and clearly what was going to happen is there would eventually be a democratization of distribution.
Yeah.
And that was
for the internet.
Via the internet.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, let's stay sort of on the cutting edge of this. And Alfred was like, we had just tried to do a film on 16 millimeter.
Yeah.
And he's like, let's do something on digital video.
Yeah.
I mean, the guys out of Orlando, the Hacks and Films guys, did Blair Witch Project on a camcorder. And it became this, we weren't looking to do that. Because I remember seeing that was shot, Mike Figgis did Super 8 or 8 millimeter. He did like Super 8. He did like this video thing. There was what was it like? There was a thing at Sundance with us that was like a parody of a reality show. But it was everything that was shot on video, like Blair Witch.
Yeah.
It incorporated the concept of video into the. Right. It was inherent in the concept.
And everybody knew what that looked like.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's because, and even if you're a lay person, you're not a film person, you know the difference between watching a video and watching film.
But they were using it as a tool, like they wanted it to look like
part of the story. And so I said, Alfred, I'm like, maybe we should do nonfiction. Like, audiences are accustomed to seeing docs and news in video.
Right.
Why don't we make a documentary? We had never made a documentary before, never took a documentary class. I love documentaries. I watched them. I read about them. And but we're like, okay, let's do that then. And so it became this perfect storm of Alfred talking about the technology, me saying, well, I think the best use of it is this way.
Yeah.
And then we started hearing about this story coming out of Gainesville, your favorite place, Gainesville, Florida, the University of Florida. And the story was there was an exotic dancer who was who had claimed that she had been raped at the Delta Chi fraternity house in the spring of '99, and that the entire night's events had been caught on videotape. And that videotape had been released publicly as part of a case of filing a false police report against the woman with these very kind of like open, what we call sunshine laws, these public records laws. So she did not get protected by rape shield laws because they claimed that she was the offender in this matter. And what happened was I spoke to a couple guys from the shtetl. I say that because a lot of people go to our flagship universities, FSU and University of Florida. So two guys I grew up with, I say that like we come from very similar backgrounds, educations, neighborhoods, socioeconomic status. And one of them said, hey, did you hear about this video? They were calling it the rape tape in Gainesville. And I'm like, and as people would get it through the public records on VHS, people would have like keggers to watch the thing like Rocky Horror style at their house or fraternity house, whatever. It's pretty grotesque. And one guy says to me, hey, do you see the video? Like, it's disgusting. I haven't been able to sleep. It's haunting. What these guys do, this woman is terrible. Yeah. And then I spoke to another dude that I knew, that we all knew, who was like, this woman's a liar. She tried to ruin these guys' life. And I was like, how did these two guys watch the same video that we expect to tell some objective truth about a crime? Yeah. And they have completely different views about what they witnessed, whether it was a consensual sex act or not. Yeah. And so that's when I was like, well, maybe there should be that first doc on video that we should. And 1 year later, we were at the Sundance Film Festival. From the moment of like getting the idea in January of 2000
with Raw Deal.
With Raw Deal, A Question of Consent. Yeah,
and it got a lot of heat.
Got a lot of heat. It was on the front page of the New York Post.
And
it was crazy.
Did it have any ripple effect legally? You know, did she get justice?
Not really. Well, I mean, people watch the doc and just like you're watching the video and disagree because we put it together like a court case, and that's still how we put our docs together. It's like we might be making a case, but the audience is the jury. So it's like here's the evidence, here's the testimony, and you decide.
So that's like old school journalistic doc making in a way.
In a way, yeah.
I mean, where you're not inserting yourself and your personality on screen, you're not walking around doing a shtick, are you, generally?
No, in that one, I had to chase a state attorney around the block. That's the only time you see me on camera because he wouldn't give us an interview.
But you don't make it about you, which is another form of doc.
I won't even, unless it's completely essential to understand an exchange or it's a laugh. Or it's funnier if you hear me, my interplay with the subject. I don't even like putting my voice from off camera in the doc if I can avoid it.
Right.
So nobody wants to hear from me. They want to,
but the thing that's compelling to you is those docs where, you've been given these sides and then you
faxed.
Yeah. Yeah. And you decide. Even the new one is sort of like that. And it's all left.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to weigh this guy's morality. And then his contrition, and then his act of defiance. But you still got this guy.
Yeah, and you either trust or you don't. You believe, you don't. You can question his sincerity. I'm cool with all of that.
Yeah, well, there's no reason to trust him from the get-go.
There's less than no reason.
But by presenting Lev Parnas from both sides and how he was treated in the media, and then what he decided to do and everything else. Before we get to that, I mean, you've done 20 docs.
Well, this was the decision. Is that true? I've lost. I just asked my partners the other day. I'm like, what did we?
We did that one about the Peter
Gation. I love that story.
It's an interesting guy. Kind of a dark story. Yeah. But the Cocaine Cowboy thing, that got you a lot of heat.
Yeah. I mean, that was our first, people think it's our first doc, but it was the one we did right after. Because Raw Deal, everybody was like, hey, now you've been anointed the bells of the Sundance Ball. New York Post actually wrote that about us. They're like, where are you going to go, move to New York or L.A.?
Yeah.
And as obvious as it was to people that we would move to New York or L.A., it was just as obvious to us that we would go home to Miami because we didn't want to be three more schmucks peddling our wares in New York or L.A.
Yeah, why not be where it's all happening?
Yeah, we wanted to be the Miami guy, so people would know. We'd have a calling card, which is why we made Cocaine Cowboys, because Raw Deal wasn't necessarily. It was a Florida true crime calling card, but it wasn't the Miami calling card that
it wasn't about. It wasn't a Florida story.
Right. Florida. It wasn't where city was character and people were going to be like, oh, those are the Miami storytellers in nonfiction. But my favorite saying is that L.A. is where you go when you want to be somebody. New York is where you go when you are somebody, and Miami's where you go when you want to be somebody else.
Right.
It's
I used to say it's for people at the end of their lives or at the end of their ropes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I don't know if it's still that anymore.
It's still a sunny place for shady people. It always will be, and it's still that place of transformation of second chances. It's not like in New England. It's what's your name? Who's your daddy? There's legacy. There's history.
Yeah.
Miami is one of the youngest cities in America, and we are America's perpetual belligerent teenager. It's the new. Everybody's a Gatsby. Everyone's nouveau riche.
Yeah, but there's a tremendous influx of Latino culture too that is kind of defines it, doesn't it?
From everywhere. Now, pandemic forward, the influx accelerated. All of the worst trends of Florida accelerated in a really violent way. Everything about the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow. Just the unaffordability, the crumbling infrastructure, the toxic politics,
rising tides,
and all of it. Miami has every 21st century problem. All of that, and we're doing nothing to confront it.
Well, I remember being at my mother's years ago, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and we were staying on the beach, me and an ex-girlfriend of mine, and the water had risen into the road. like into the one.
Like on a sunny day, that
Well,
happens.
no, it was at night. The tide came up, and I'm like, what is happening? Did something break? Yeah, the world, the planet is broken.
It's very biblical. It's very biblical down there. We're constantly reminded of our, it's funny because like, the legend is that Ponce de Leon discovered Florida on a search for the Fountain of Youth. And like, we're constantly reminded of our mortality in Florida. It's
crazy, man.
It's amazing.
But yeah, you did a lot of the sports docs, Dogfight, Cocaine Cowboys, but like you've done, what you're doing now, and I imagine you have access to money from a few sources when you want to do something.
Well, there was a while, like, we've survived multiple iterations of this industry. It started as indie film. It was straight indie film. Doctors, dentists, friends with money who believe in you, not necessarily the project, and want to see you succeed.
What's their ceiling usually, like $50,000? Or?
I mean, not barely. Like, you get 5 here, 25 here. Like, you just put it together, and then you do the film festivals where there was, like, a tiny gaggle of gatekeepers of the so-called documentary distributors, of which there was precious few at that in the Raw Deal and Cocaine Cowboys days. And nobody got Cocaine Cowboys. Nobody wanted to. We could get meetings with everyone after Raw Deal, after Sundance, and we pitched Cocaine Cowboys to all the quote buyers at the time. Nobody wanted to make it. Nobody got it. Nobody was interested. Like, didn't we see this in like Miami Vice and Scarface? We're like, well, first of all, no, you've never seen this in nonfiction, number one. And number two, how many Italian mafia stories are you going to tell over and over and over again? How many times are we hear Elliot Ness and Al Capone? Like, we're going to do this, and nobody wanted to make it. So we had to scrape together for Cocaine Cowboys. And then suddenly it was like it was this idea that, like, because we were still pitching in New York or LA, which were like vacuums of creativity, like in the quote unquote industry. Like, how else to explain in our lifetimes, 2 Truman Capote movies at the same time, 2 Volcano movies at the same time, 2 Asteroid Hurtling, 2 Robin Hood. Like, every time they're, hey, someone just greenlit a Volcano. Don't we have a Volcano script somewhere? Let's dust that off and like, let's make dueling volcanoes. It's like, does anybody like, volcanoes are hot? It's like, just who cares about?
We got to compete with the other volcano.
Yeah, we're like, well, we think that this is like coming around like the 20-year nostalgia cycle of like Miami in the 80s. Like, we thought like this was the perfect time. Grand Theft Auto Vice City was the biggest selling video game at that time of all time. Scarface just had like its 20th anniversary. And I think on DVD it outsold like Jurassic Park and E.T. combined.
Well, it had a whole second life, Scarface.
Yeah, and as this hip-hop, legendary
Well, that's what made the movie. I just talked to Pacino. I mean, when that movie came out, the critics were like, what is this garbage?
I thought it was a masterpiece because it's practically a documentary. I mean, Oliver Stone did his research. I will tell he did his research in Miami when he wrote that script, and it is a composite of like everything that was really happening in Miami at the time. Even though it's considered this sort of like absurdist or operatic kind of, it was spot on, dude. And so we wanted to tell those true stories, and nobody really was down.
Well, so how's the business evolved in terms of getting things made?
Well, there was a time when, like I said, there was pure indie film. Yeah. And then there was a time when we were doing commissions. That's how, like, 30 for 30, like, ESPN's came. And,
that's right.
What is it?
I talked to that guy who did that great OJ one.
Oh, Ezra.
Yeah, the best.
Masterpiece.
Yeah.
Like, that was like,
the best.
I call it the first documentary to become an EGOT. I don't know how it won the Tony, but it just won, deservedly so, every award under the sun. It was just, that to me was I call that the last 30 for 30. That's like the mic drop. How do you keep doing anything after?
It was
that?
Pretty astounding.
But we just like, we wanted to keep doing this pop doc thing because Cocaine Cowboys, our take was that this isn't a documentary. Because like documentary had that stigma of like the teacher rolling in the film projector, and you're like, oh, all right, but we wanted to make a gangster movie. Right. We were like, how would Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese make a documentary? Like, let's do that. A lot of gray, a lot of colorful characters of dubious at best morality, and
you had to go track him down, talk to him.
Track him, went to prison, and found the people because that was the other thing too. If
who does all that work?
We all do. I mean, everybody's got to do their part.
You got to take all the press on it and then break down who the prime players are and figure out, how to put together the story in that way.
Dig into files, dig into depositions, and find out with the hitman, Rivi Ayala in Cocaine Cowboys, he was in a unique position where in Miami-Dade County, he had a deal to confess to countless homicides in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. So he could talk. He couldn't talk about murders in New York or in Broward County, in other but he could talk chapter and verse about the homicides that he was aware of or participated in Miami, and it was dozens of them, of men, women, and children. And so he was in a really unique position to speak freely. And
good for you.
And I wanted to do first person productions. I didn't want to. For me, it was all about I and we, not they and she. You can always find a lawyer or a cop or the next door neighbor, someone who will talk about a person or an event. But I wanted the people who did it. Now, that calls into question memories, agendas, revisionist history. But that to me is part of the fun and the challenge, like I said.
And then when you got a guy who won't shut up like Lev, then you can bring a lawyer in just to for a little color.
Dude, when Rachel Maddow interviewed Lev, which is where we first discovered him as a character in January of 2020, he was there with his lawyer, and Rachel thought, well, I'm going to interview the lawyer, basically, and then Lev's going to chime in. The lawyer said not 3 words the whole time. Lev was in jeopardy at that time.
Well, usually people go on with their lawyers just so the lawyer, if needed be, they can go no.
Right, shut up. Shut the fuck up, dude. Well, Alfred always jokes that or half jokes that in Florida, when you get out of prison, your first call is to your mother, and your second call is to us to make a documentary about you. Lev was the rare case where we were making a documentary about a guy on his way to federal prison. Our first interview with him, which is not in the doc, it was our development, if you will.
So you saw him on Rachel, but you don't contact Rachel at that point.
Oh no. We have a running list, like a Google Doc of we call our genre Florida fuckery. So whenever Florida fuckery rears its head, which is usually there's always a Florida connection. 9/11, Watergate, right? OJ moved down. So there's always that Florida connection, and so things come on our radar, and we're interested in that. What's happening now, which is not great, is that documentaries are getting made too soon. They're getting made too quick. Yeah, you need some perspective and some
because it's a Netflix thing, and they know they can pull eyes.
It's not good for
because
preserving history.
Right. It's good for keep the sordid story going,
and whatever the agenda of the person you get access to is, without the perspective and without more people who may be willing to offer that. And so Lev was on our list when he gets indicted in October of 2019. Yeah. Well, Southern District of New York.
Okay.
But he was arrested on a plane at the airport in D.C. His home in Florida got raided, where his wife and
Isn't there an indictment
in
Florida? Wasn't the fraud indictment from Florida?
It was all out of the Southern District of New York. Right. Yeah, they took it over. They took all Lev-related cases over. But I call the Lev Parnas story it is Tom Clancy if Jack Ryan was played by Jackie Mason.
Yeah.
That's what this story. And it's one of our favorite Florida fuckery stories because it's about Florida men behaving badly with international implications, like the butterfly effect of just a Florida man acting a fool, and suddenly the course of history is
so. For people
altered.
Who don't really have him in perspective, he and Igor were kind of
Igor,
were brought in as these Ukrainian emissaries for the Trump administration through Rudy Giuliani to try to pressure Zelensky to open up a probe into Hunter Biden, ultimately, which led to the impeachable crime of Trump withholding aid to Ukraine unless Zelensky played ball with his Hunter Biden investigation.
It's so stupid.
But that's really what it ends up at.
And in fact, Lev and Igor attempted to shake down not just Zelensky, but his predecessor, Poroshenko. So it was two successive
But
Ukrainian
that was their
presidents.
job. Giuliani was
dig up dirt on Biden, on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden, and get the Ukrainians to announce an investigation into Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and alleged bribery and or money laundering through this corrupt energy company, Burisma, that Hunter Biden had what they called a no-show job on the board, a paid gig on the board.
But they couldn't even manufacture evidence.
They couldn't do these guys. So it reminded me of, remember when George W. Bush nominated Harriet Miers to the Supreme Court, like that very short-lived. He's like, well, I need a lady. Where's the nearest lady lawyer to my office? Yeah. Like, oh, her, make it her. This is what Rudy's like. Oh, I know some Ukrainians. We have some Ukrainians, and they're like, they'll do anything. Yeah. These guys, and so he recruits them to be like into espionage and into like a shadow diplomacy operation.
And these guys are probably the least quiet guys that you could recruit. Yeah,
they're hustlers. They're con men.
Well, I think that's what's great about the doc is you really kind of establish, Lev's history of, just being, this hustling, grifting, and, like a organized crime adjacent or full in guy. But he's like got this demeanor where, like he's not one of these guys. He's not like a made guy. He's a guy that's going to like survive on his charm and facilitate things for whoever. And then hopefully before it gets too ugly, get out without getting and with some sort of favor owed.
And he's not a political guy.
No.
He wasn't even registered to vote in 2016 when he was supporting and helping to donate money to Trump.
But I like the whole original story that he comes over from Ukraine. He ends up, young, and he got into some trouble in Ukraine with some heavies. He ends up in Coney Island with the rest. It's Jewish, right?
Brighton Beach, yes.
Seems very Jewish.
Very Jewish.
So he was part of that, that Russian kind of purge of Jews, I guess, in a way. I don't know how it worked in the Ukraine.
Yes, exactly, because it was Soviet Ukraine at the time. Right. Absolutely.
Because
a lot of anti-Semitism.
But there was a time where they're like, okay, you can get out now.
Yes.
And like thousands.
Yeah. And you better get out now.
Right.
Yeah. And that's how his future's third wife and fourth baby mama, Svetlana. That's how she got out.
She seems very pleasant.
She is, to me, she's the star of the movie. I remember meeting her and I was like, well, I decided she was going to be in the movie about a year and a half or two before she decided she was going to be in the movie. Because I was like, she helps Lev make sense a little bit more in a way. And I feel like it's a bit of...
Because she loves the guy and he knows he's kind of half a clown.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, she's the one who says, like, okay, if this were a Hillary Clinton administration or a Barack Obama administration or a Joe Biden administration or even a George W. Bush administration, Lev Parnas doesn't get within 500 miles of the president of the United States, let alone be one of his plumbers, like Nixon, like a Watergate burglar, for Giuliani in Ukraine, and that's really what it was. Giuliani was like the Howard Hunt in this metaphor here of and Lev and Igor were Trump's plumbers is exactly what they were. And Svetlana's like, this guy's not qualified to do anything. What the hell is he running around the country on behalf of the president for, thinking he's going to get a medal? And she is the one who's trying to talk reason into him the whole time, but he's just slipping away. And so this is a little bit of
away into Trump brain.
He refers to it as in a word he made up, but doesn't know he made up. Yeah. He was cultinized. Yeah. is what he.
I think that, I think what that really explores, though, in terms of what that cult means, I don't think people, it's easy to say they got brainwashed or whatever, but when you have proximity to the most powerful person on the planet, I mean, it's very seductive.
Intoxicating. He admits that. And he admits that his initial motivations were purely financial. He was looking
but also,
money.
like, the funny thing about him is, like, while you're talking to him, post everything, like, as, Lev now, he still refers to, without thinking, to deep state as a real thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because I wanted to understand his state of mind at the time, and he was a true believer. Yeah. Like a true believer. And so, and she, and Svetlana watched him go from like, okay, this is a hustle. He's trying to like buy influence in the Republican Party, which, I mean, in a legendary and historic way, put up a for sale sign like just in front of
because he had his own money laundering operations and fronts to make money.
Very hard at work doing in the laundry business. Yeah, absolutely. And he was curring, and so she thought Lev's just on the hustle, and then comes to realize like no, he's like way in over.
He doesn't even know how.
He doesn't even understand.
That's the thing about Trump in particular is like anybody who gets intoxicated and seduced by the power. It's like look at what's come before you. You're going to get thrown under the bus. There's no way.
Yeah, there's a forest lawn like sized graveyard of like the people that he stepped on and used and discarded. Absolutely. And she. So and this is a little bit of a cheat, sort of how the. How the sausage is made. Yeah. But like when I met her, I was like, okay. And when we did the deal with MSNBC earlier this year, and I realized I was going to have like 89 minutes, without commercials to tell the story. I'm like, I need some shorthand here to make this work.
How did Rachel sign off on this? Because that's an honor, because she's like, really one of the smartest journalists around. And I know her, and it's like, she's not, to have her trust you with something like this, that's a big deal.
Well, we had, like I said, Lev was on our list, if you will, a Florida men list, and in late 2019. Yeah. And then it was January of 2020 when Rachel did the interview with him. Yeah. Really against his own best interests, he did that interview. Yeah. And
was he trying to save his ass then?
He was looking for redemption. Right. Because remember, this was a guy without a country because he betrayed both of his countries.
Well, it was like he thought he was going to get.
Yeah. So this was a guy who was hated by the left for being a treason weasel. Yeah. And he was hated by the right because he did the worst thing in the world, which was turn on Trump. That's the worst thing you can.
And that's where the slander campaign came everywhere. Like, everyone's saying they didn't know him.
Yeah. He was an SP. He was a suppressive person. He was excommunicated.
But it's hilarious. So like, he's like on his phone, he's got 1,000 pictures of him and Trump.
Everything.
And Trump's like, I might take a picture with him.
He had documented everything.
That stuff, that recording that I guess Igor did of Trump putting a political hit out on the ambassador. What was her name?
Marie Ivanovich. Yeah. You have to remember that recording, I believe, documents the first time that Trump had ever
heard about that woman.
Well, who that woman? Like, he didn't know Marie Ivanovich. Yeah. He didn't even know Ukraine had oil.
And what do you say? She's out like
get her. This is the reality show foreign policy of a reality show president. It was literally boardroom at the end of The Apprentice. Yeah. He was like, get rid of her. I want her out. Yeah. Get her out. Yeah. It was mobbed. It was TV. Yeah. Just like, it was make believe, but this was a professional.
But like a year or so later, she's out.
Yeah, and it took him that long and this is the thing that's I think so frightening about this moment. You were saying earlier about how people think like, oh, we survived 4 years of this the first time. It's just another presidency. Yeah. It's just another term. Here's the thing. Love him or hate him, people like Jeff Sessions, Mike Pompeo, Rex Tillerson, John Bolton. Believe it or not, there were adults or even maybe statesmen in that first administration. Right. People, deep state, people that they would call the deep state, but people who respected norms and, I don't know, allies and NATO and things that kept peace in the world for more than half a century. And so there were guardrails in place. Those people are gone. And Lev says, now he says, like, he goes, who's going to be the attorney general now? Or Alina Habba, who's going to be the NSA director? Kash Patel, who's going to be who's going to be this? Like, what are we like? Who are the people that are going to like? Steve Bannon's going to be the CIA director. Like what? Like these are the president's men.
Well, but that's how autocracy works. I mean, that's how like a dictatorship forms itself. I mean, once you get rid of the norms and people are dumb enough not to know what they are. But I think that's exactly how these guys want to do business. The way that Trump wants to run it and all these fascists, they just want, like, I'll call Putin. Don't make any news about it.
It needs diplomacy.
Right, because it's just this voice network of autocrats that can, operate at the behest of themselves, frighten the people or get them, and then just, through their own self-interest, run the global financial system.
I think there's some people who are in a cult. I think there's some people who are too, in Florida, obviously there's a very large elderly population who find themselves the victims of con men and get to, and a lot of them are too prideful to complain or to report it because they don't want to admit that they've been had. Yeah. So I think there's some people in that position with Trump too, because if they admit now that this whole thing has been a fraud or a lie,
but they're still hedging,
they're the fools who got duped.
But they're still hedging their bets for the next administration. They don't need to admit anything. Right. I mean, some of them are doing that. Probably, if he preemptively, if he wins again, who are like, now's the time to finally go Trump. But they're going to come groveling if he wins again.
Yeah.
But we don't have to go there. So Lev.
We don't. We may have to. We may have to go there in a month.
Let's enjoy the month.
All right.
So let's try to. But like this Lev and his come to Jesus moments and his contrition and, but I think that in this documentary, I think you put it together, through his personality, through the way that the Trump operation was structured, through Giuliani doing this stuff. But then
you mean our next attorney general?
Yeah.
Rudolph Giuliani.
Trump cut him loose a long time ago. He just never goes away. He just never goes away. But there were some interesting things about Giuliani in a brief moment in the doc. You talk about how like he was the mob prosecutor. He was getting rid of the mob in New York, and now it turns out that it was envy. He loves a mob, and he wanted nothing more than to be part of it, and he got his mob with Trump. But I think the way you sort of laid out the real crime against the country and the real reason why the impeachment made sense and should have stuck harder, and the scariness of the fact that, people don't really realize just how awful a thing that he did by denying an ally aid to serve his, political prospects in the future. I mean, that's a big deal. And I think people need to be reminded, and it needs to be explained to them. There's one guy on the news says this is worse than Watergate, and it kind of is.
I think the fire hose that we ate for 4 years, and have really for the subsequent 4 years as well since that administration left, has just been so overwhelming that we memory hold scandals that would have otherwise sunk any other political career or campaign. Yeah. And they were catastrophic and arguably, I know the word gets thrown around a lot in context of Trump, but treasonous. And
totally.
And in the case of Ukraine, you had a situation where Russia was going to roll over this country. They had been occupying them since 2014. Yeah. And even though we just think of the war kind of heating up, more recently, they've been there since 2014. Yeah. And Trump just saying, it would be a shame if something happened to your nice little country over there. I know you need some help, and Congress had already approved hundreds of millions of dollars in aid and weaponry and things. And he's like, but do us a little favor.
Sure, yeah.
Do us a little favor. The perfect phone call, as he called it. And he only stepped in, as mob bosses do, when their underlings up the job. When he's like, I told you to go and take care of the thing, and now you fit up, and now I got to make the call. Like that's what that call was, and it sent alarm bells all around the intelligence community. Anybody who was on the call or who read the breakdown of the transcript of the call, people were like, we have a serious problem here. And that problem is going to obviously metastasize in the event. I mean, whenever Putin wants to leave Ukraine, the war's over. He can just leave Ukraine. Yeah. But that's not what that's not what he's holding out for. November.
If Trump had won, in the second term, he would have let Putin take it.
Oh, yes. He's a real estate guy, Mark. It's a real estate deal. It's a real estate deal.
But I like how you keep it on Lev. You move through all this stuff, but then Lev is, has a come to Jesus moment. He has his brain. And
does he though?
Well, that's a good question. But because those kind of guys, they can turn on the waterworks. They can cry a little bit.
Yeah. People forget that con is short for confidence.
Yeah. But there is these moments where, he all of a sudden becomes very kind of pro-democracy, feels bad. But ultimately, the human part of it is the thing he seems to feel the worst about is putting Hunter Biden into a position that he didn't deserve. Well, of starting the whole, avalanche onto this, this hopeless drug addict who...
the only thing I knew about Hunter Biden was from right-wing memes and from this show. Sure. Because, it was the first time when I was where he felt like not this enigma or this boogeyman, but he humanized him, and it was a conversation that I was like, oh, he's just a guy with a problem, and we all are guys with problems.
The thing that people my interview with him was to show you don't think this kid was a problem for his father? The idea that his father would say go make some deals for me. This out of control crackhead who's just he's gone. And that's never discussed, and Joe won't discuss it, and Hunter would discuss it, but that guy had to have been a nightmare for Joe Biden.
Nightmare. I talk about this with permission, but my brother is 17 years sober next month. Yeah, and so we've been through it. My family has been. Sure, the life savings to put him into rehab, only to relapse, and the whole. Yeah. We've been through the whole cycle, and again, and then repeat. Yeah.
Well, there's